media, entertainment, and sport, shaping the future of mobility, shaping the future of technology governance, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, shaping the future of technology governance, blockchain and digital assets, shaping the future of technology governance, data policy, shaping the future of trade and global economic interdependence, shaping the future of the Internet of Things and urban transformation, shaping the future of the new economy and society. They are shaping the economic, technological, and societal side of the New World Order. The government side is run through the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The 17 SDGs and this organization work parallel with each other. But this is what they are. So now that you understand that, let's look into what they have said. Let's start with this. Now listen closely. When hearing these words, who does this sound like? Companies should pay their fair share of taxes, show zero tolerance for corruption, uphold human rights, and advocate for a competitive playing field. Who does that sound like? If you were paying attention to the words during the election, this sounds an awful lot like Joe Biden, right? Wrong. This is from Professor Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. This is part of their new Davos Manifesto, which is more like their mission statement for the New World Order.
And it's time corporate America paid their fair share of taxes.
Joe Biden is just a mouthpiece for this agenda, getting the American people to accept it and be conditioned for it. His agenda is aligned with the New World Order. It should be understood that everyone that voted for Biden, making a checkbox for Joe Biden this election, voted for the New World Order. Let that just sink in. And with that, that's not just giving immediate credibility to the Trump supporters, but just the overall reality of this year's vote. Professor Schwab has been talking a great deal about the Great Reset.
What kind of world do we want to build? What do we know? What did we learn? I think the world which we want to create with the Great Reset has to be much more resilient. It has to be because security, people will demand more security. Physical security, health security. It will have to be more inclusive and finally more sustainable.
On their website, there's an article called "Now is the Time for a Great Reset." So it should be understood that they are working to press the restart button now. The article says this: COVID-19 lockdowns may be gradually easing, but anxiety about the world's social and economic prospects is only intensifying. There is good reason to worry. A sharp economic downturn has already begun, and we could be facing the worst depression since the 1930s. But while this outcome is likely, it is not unavoidable. To achieve a better outcome, the world must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our societies and economies, from education to social contracts and working conditions. Every country, from the United States to China, must participate, and every industry, from oil and gas to tech, must be transformed. In short, we need a great reset of capitalism. And this is what they're calling for. The complete way that the world works right now, they want a complete fundamental shift, a reset of it. You see the picture on the article, right? It says, push to reset the world. This is what they are planning, and it's important to understand that it's not just about ideas, but an actual plan that has been analyzed and is being worked on to be implemented. Professor Schwab wrote the book, COVID-19, The Great Reset. If you want to understand the agenda for the world, you should get this book. He explains a great deal in it. It is clearly seen when understanding the full agenda for this world conspiracy that COVID-19 is being used as a great scapegoat for their transition into the coming New World Order. They are using the disruption from this plandemic to implement the transition to the new world they have been preparing for. In the introduction of his book, Professor Schwab says this: the worldwide crisis triggered by the coronavirus pandemic has no parallel in modern history. We cannot be accused of hyperbole when we say it is plunging our world in its entirety, and each of us individually, into the most challenging times we've faced in generations. It is our defining moment. We will be dealing with its fallout for years, and many things will change forever. It is bringing economic disruption of monumental proportions, creating a dangerous and volatile period on multiple fronts. politically, socially, geopolitically, raising deep concerns about the environment and also extending the reach, pernicious or otherwise, of technology into our lives. No industry or business will be spared from the impact of these changes. Millions of companies risk disappearing, and many industries face an uncertain future. A few will thrive. On an individual basis for many, life as they've always known it is unraveling at alarming speed. But deep existential crises also favor introspection and can harbor the potential for transformation. The fault lines of the world, most notably social divides, lack of fairness, absence of cooperation, failure of global governance and leadership, now lie exposed as never before. And people feel the time for reinvention has come. A new world will emerge, the contours of which are for us to both imagine and to draw. At the time of writing, June 2020, the pandemic continues to worsen globally. Many of us are pondering when things will return to normal. The short response is never. Nothing will ever return to the broken sense of normalcy that prevailed prior to the crisis, because the coronavirus pandemic marks a fundamental inflection point in our global trajectory. Some analysts call it a major bifurcation. Others refer to a deep crisis of biblical proportions. But the essence remains the same. The world as we knew it in the early months of 2020 is no more, dissolved in the context of the pandemic. Wow, I mean, you see, they're not hiding anything. Based on their writing, you can see they already know things will not go back to normal. It's very telling. They are planning for a world that will be changing. It's funny and ironic because they're going over this whole indoctrination of getting the world back to normal with this vaccine, but they actually already know that the world is not going back to normal. That should be interesting to you. Now, have you ever heard that if you want to tell a secret, you put it in a book? That is so true. This book speaks on many different things that you would think that the general public should be made aware of. But yet the world media, the financial channels, all keep it very quiet in speaking to the general public. Most people have heard of the Great Reset, but don't know much information in regards to what the Great Reset is. This is such a big subject, it's hard to pinpoint on one thing when there's so many things to discuss. We are talking about a Great Reset. In the book, they are planning for an economic reset, a societal reset, a geopolitical reset, an environmental reset, a technological reset, and an individual reset. This is exactly why they are calling it a Great Reset. All the areas of our lives are being reset. This is not a conspiracy, but a developed plan that is being spoken of so the initiated can be prepared. Now, like I said, it is very difficult to go over all of what they say in this book, but I will do my best to pinpoint some important points. In regards to the economic reset, listen to what it says about the United States dollar. The fate of the US dollar. For decades, the United States has enjoyed the exorbitant privilege of retaining the global currency reserve, a status that has long been a perk of imperial might and economic elixir. To a considerable extent, American power and prosperity have been built and reinforced by the global trust in the dollar and the willingness of customers abroad to hold it, most often in the form of United States government bonds. For quite some time, some analysts and policymakers have been considering a possible and progressive end to the dominance of the dollar. They now think that the pandemic might be the catalyst that proves them right. On the one hand, managing the economy sensibly, doubters of U.S. dollar dominance point to the inevitable and sharp deterioration of the U.S. fiscal position. In their mind, unsustainable levels of debt will eventually erode confidence in the United States dollar. Just prior to the pandemic, United States defense spending, plus interest on the federal debt, plus annual entitlement payments, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, represented 112% of federal tax receipts versus 95% in 2017. This unsustainable path will worsen in the post-pandemic, post-bailout era. This argument suggests that something major will therefore have to change, either through a much reduced geopolitical role or higher taxation, or both. Otherwise, the rising deficit will reach a threshold beyond which non-U.S. investors are unwilling to fund it.